everyone. It is Alicia, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Edemy podcast. I have to apologize. I have been doing so many things this month. My daughter graduated, and I had family in town. So there's been a lot going on. So that is why I've not had a chance to record for this month. But have no fear, I am back. And I hope you guys have been doing well. Like I said, it has just been a whirlwind, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I can breathe a bit. Let me get back on the mic and talk to my people. I've missed, podcasting and just, connecting with you all. So glad to be back. Like I said, I hope you all are doing well. I mean, as we are continuing through the month of June, I have been really intentional about like how I approach this month in many ways, like not even just with podcasting, just in general with like how I approach celebrating pride, how I show up in certain spaces, and just really be mindful of what I'm doing this month and just in general. But I thought for this particular episode, I would focus on something that has been one of the toughest things that I had to address being a part of the LGBTQ plus community. And that was my faith growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and experiencing a lot of hate and hurt and trauma because of who I am as an LGBTQ plus person. And I want to start this off before I continue on just to say, like, this is not a bashing of the Seventh-day Adventist Church or any religion. This is just my experience and what I dealt with and what I have also looked up. A bug there, y'all. Just kind of like found different articles and, just wanted to share some information with you all as well. So I just wanted to definitely say that because I still have family that practice the Adventist beliefs. And I do feel like there are some things that I learned growing up Adventist that have been beneficial in my life and that I will carry for the rest of my life. The health message is by far one of the best things that I've ever practiced, and I feel like more people would benefit from the health message that the Seventh-day Adventist Church provides and offers. And so I'm grateful that I was able to grow up in a religion that focused on the physical and even mental well-being to a degree, right? When you think about what I'm talking about. But to really focusing on how to manage the body in a way that's healthy, and that would afford you longevity in this life as well. So, like I said, I'm definitely blessed to have had that type of experience, and also, different relationships that I've built within the Adventist community. I have, friends that I grew up with that I'm still friends with today. I mean, I hung out with one of my childhood friends yesterday, or 2 days ago, rather, because we still have that bond. And so I don't. Um, uh, I don't want it to like this to be something where it's like, oh my gosh, she's bashing the Adventist church and all the beliefs and this, that, and the other, and that's not it at all. But I'm just like I said, speaking my truth, and my truth is what it is, right? And so starting out this whole conversation today, I was like, how do you even, where do you start? And I guess I just start from wherever it just hits me. But I do remember at a very young age knowing that I was, someone who was attracted to the same sex. It was very early on. I was very young, maybe like 5 or 6, and it wasn't anything sexual. And I think that's another thing I just also love explaining and sharing with people is that children are not sexualized unless they've been sexualized, right? And our whoever we're attracted to, right? Like let's just take out the whole sex piece, y'all. Take out the lustful connotations that many people instantly deem as something that homosexual people would um gravitate to, right? So let's just completely wipe that out because at the end of the day, anyone with any type of lust or desire to be lustful, regardless if you're a part of the LGBTQ plus community or not, If you act on that, you act on that. It has nothing to do with you being gay, straight, or otherwise, right? But when we're thinking about attraction, who you're attracted to, some people you just instantly gravitate to, or certain peoples, it's like, oh, those are my people, right? That's where I feel comfortable and welcome. That type of person is what I, you know, would like to be with in terms of a relationship. I like their character. I like the way they do certain things. You know, see myself in them. Those types of things. And I remember as a child, obviously having the feelings of I think girls are cute. I like, what they look like. I didn't have any idea of what the sexual piece was, but I just knew I liked them, right? And even beyond just my attraction to females, seeing certain people in my hometown that dressed a certain way. There was a man I remember growing up, I can't think of his name offhand, but he would dress in, very flamboyant clothes. I would get my hair done. I would go to the salon. My mom would send me to this beauty salon to get my hair done. And there were men there that were very flamboyant, and I would just gravitate to them. I was like, there's something about them that is, I mean, obviously it's not the same as me, but something about their energy, their essence. It's something that like it speaks to me, and I don't know why, right? Especially then, because I was very, rooted into the Adventist beliefs, but something was saying to me, though, those are your people, right? And so, you just continue on in life, just not, or at least for me, not questioning at that time what was, why I thought and felt this way. I would just kind of like dismiss it or even suppress the idea of thinking about those things because growing up, like I said, growing up Adventist, it's it's a very strict religion. And the religion alone is strict, let alone even thinking about homosexuality. I mean, that was just a no-no, huge, condemnation as it related to practicing Adventism. That was just not even something that was a part of the whole process. And I prayed a lot growing up, especially in my adolescence and on, when I really started, getting those feelings of attraction. And even if you want to bring in the whole sexual piece, being like sexually interested in someone. Of course, you think of boys because at least, where I'm from Indiana, and I grew up Adventist, and it's just expected that you would find a boy and you date them, and hopefully eventually you marry them and start your family and, the whole gamut, right? And listen, I was doing everything I could to attempt to conform to that. And at the same time, I wasn't like truly, truly dating, right? It was just kind of like these one off experiences just to show that I'm interested in boys. And it wasn't questioned, right? And a lot of people didn't question me. Um, when it came to that as well, because I was so involved in so many activities at school and, in my church. So it was just, I was always busy. So to even really think of me pursuing anyone in that way, my schedule was so busy. And I booked myself and, overbooked myself in so many ways just so that wouldn't be an issue. And I don't know if consciously that's how I was doing it, but now in hindsight, I realized a lot of that was just really me trying to keep myself busy and not be in a position to be questioned about certain things. Now, obviously, it comes up here and there, and it's just like, oh, I'm just, it's just not a thing. And then also, it was a thing of it being something that I felt really available to, or that it was available to me in general to be in a relationship with, a heterosexual person, right? Or just not a heterosexual person, but just be in a relationship with the opposite sex. There we go. I don't know why that was, like, so random, but there's something on my teeth, y'all. You watching on YouTube? Oh, yeah, there is. Food. That was a little weird. Anyway, and I digress. But, it was just a lot of really just trying to figure out myself and understand what was going on in my life, in my world, and trying to make sense of everything, at a time where especially then, even beyond the church situation, being gay was just not acceptable. In the 90s, it was It just wasn't a thing. And obviously a lot better than other times, but it still wasn't something that you could just easily be like, dating this girl, or it just wasn't a thing. But my focus today, as it relates to Seventh-day Adventist Church, is my experience and what I have healed through since, leaving the church and understanding that where I am in my life is completely okay and I'm okay and who I am is okay and my relationship with God is great regardless of if I'm in a particular religion or not, which I don't conform to any religion, because personally, religion for me is a construct of control and suppression. And so for that, I don't practice any religion for that reason. I believe in God. I believe in, I'm a very spiritual person. And I believe God is bigger than religion. And I believe God has created all of us in his image, regardless of our sexuality, our gender expression, or anything that would individualize us in a way that doesn't conform to the traditional cookie cutter approaches that we see in society. And so I so blessed in that regard to have been awakened in a way that I feel like if I wouldn't have, or if I would have continued to try to go down this road of keeping the facade up, who knows where I would be mentally, spiritually, who knows where I would be right now. So I'm really grateful for what has happened for me in my life and how I am presenting and just being myself, right? So there's that. But I did want to go over some things. There are a few resources I'm going to share in the show notes as it relates to the LGBTQ, or even just the stance that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has, rather, as it relates to the LGBTQ community. So I'm going to share some articles around that, as well as I wanted to talk to you all about this probably for the rest of this conversation, because my thing is, like I said, I'm not here to bash the church, because that's just not who I am. And the things that I experienced in the church, some were hurtful, some were celebratory. I mean, there's been so many different fields, which is so hard when you deal with things like this, because there were good times and obviously there were not so great times. But yeah, all that to say, there is, if you are Adventist, and I knew about this organization a while ago, but it's called the Seventh-day Adventist Kinship International. And what I have appreciated about this particular sect of the Adventist Church, I don't even know if the Adventist Church really claims the kinship, but that's a whole other story. The kinship is an actual, like I said, sect of the Adventist Church that celebrates and allows LGBTQ plus Adventists to worship in an Adventist community. And so this is what the kinship says on their website in their About section. It says, "You are loved, welcome, and affirmed, no matter your sexual orientation, gender, identity, or expression. Seventh-day Adventist Kinship International wants you to know that your story, your journey, and your life matter. For over 40 years, we have been welcoming, affirming the identities and journeys of the LGBTQIA plus Adventists and more. Our community includes," and then it just breaks it down, to the LGBTQIA plus members who are learning to accept themselves and live more authentically, learning to reconcile their faith and identity, wanting to connect with their other LGBTQIA plus Adventists, looking for a truly inclusive social and spiritual community, and then under the family and friends of LGBTQIA plus persons who are learning how to understand their LGBTQIA plus loved ones, looking to connect with other parents and families on a similar journey, learning how to understand what the Bible says, interested in connecting and affirming Adventist leaders. And then in the Adventist pastor and leaders, it says they are learning how to understand the Bible, really what the Bible really says about the LGBTQIA plus identities, wanting to minister to the LGBTQIA plus community with love and dignity, wanting to meet other pastors advocating for change in their congregations and local communities, affirming but can't be open about it because of their employer. It goes on to say what we believe. So we believe God loves all his children equally, unconditionally, no matter our gender, identity, or sexual orientation. We believe non heterosexual orientations are not in themselves problematic and so do not merit therapy, suppression, or change. We honor our members' consciences about faith and what they believe God requires of them. Some have chosen committed relationships, some have built families with children. Others are celibate. All must be convinced in their own minds as the Lord leads them. Whatever their journey, we support all of them as they grow in grace. Why we exist. Many LGBTQIA plus Adventists feel alone and isolated. Their churches, schools, and sometimes families have told them, that being LGBTQIA plus is sinful and contrary to God's word. We formed kinship to tell the LGBTQIA plus people and the Seventh-day Adventist Church the truth about the Bible does not condemn the LGBTQIA plus identities and that Adventist spaces can treat everyone with love. Join our community to share solutions, ask questions, and connect with other people on their journeys. We believe an inclusive community can change the world. Kinship leadership and members work together to create spaces that are affirming and supportive for everyone, especially people who identify as LGBTQIA plus. People in our community are on all sides of the spectrum. Um, and so they kind of like break that down. And they also let you know that you can connect with them online and then just kind of like advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community. And they kind of like go through the gamut of like just providing that information as well. And like I said, this particular sect of the Adventist church, when I first learned about it, I was at that point, I was like kind of like at the point where I was like, I really don't want to practice Adventism anymore. I knew I still wanted to be or still have a relationship with God, but I just didn't. At the time, I was in a place where I was just like I wanted to be completely free from the Adventist faith. But it was really great to know that the kinship is there for those that are still looking for fellowship with those that believe in the Adventist beliefs. So it's a beautiful way to connect. They have different regions. And if you grew up Adventist, you know that, we have the general conferences and you have the conferences within your actual area, like your state or whatever. So and I think it's with any religion, they have like certain areas that, foster to, a few states or whatever. So it's similar, I think, in that way where they are like reaching out, across the world to LGBTQIA plus Adventists that are looking for, like I said, that actual community, which is a blessing. There's a great section on the Kinship website where they offer um, resources. And one of the resources they offer, or or not so much offer, but they provide is it's a documentary, and it's called Seventh Gay Adventist. And this particular documentary talks about, I think it's like three different people who grew up Adventist and are trying to navigate their lives as LGBTQIA plus people within the Adventist church. And it's just so eye-opening. I mean, the thing is, one thing I will say about this particular documentary, it focuses on people that are not Black. And not that that means anything, but it's just a different experience, as you can imagine, being a Black Adventist versus being a white Adventist. But nevertheless, a lot of the teachings and the practices are similar as it relates to their thoughts and feelings on the LGBTQIA plus community. So it's a great documentary to actually look at and to just get an idea of what it is like to be an Adventist and how intertwined your identity is with being Adventist. Because for me, I would say, at least growing up, being Adventist in some ways was very similar to being Jewish. Your Adventist identity was huge. It was like one of the main things that you attributed to who you were as a person. And your whole world revolved about around being an Adventist in so many ways. I mean, I will say for me, we were a bit more liberal in our thoughts and the way we did practice. But for the average Adventist, they're very conservative and normally just hang around Adventist people. And if they do hang out with worldly people, it's because maybe they have a job or whatever, or they will, just go and hang out with some people. But at the end of the day, normally you're going to be hanging or be surrounded by Adventists more times than not. And so that's just a part of the process. And so for me, it was a little hard to remove myself from that community because I had been so locked in, and my whole world basically at some point revolved around being Adventist. Actually, the majority of my life, or my especially my adolescence and younger, Adventism was everything. So to be in a world like that and know that everything that I am feeling as being, queer or lesbian woman, the people that I have grown up around, the foundation of my spiritual beliefs and practices, they're all telling me that who I am is not only is it not good enough, I am a sinner and I'm going to hell, right? Unless I suppress all these thoughts and feelings and not even succumb to being in a same-sex relationship by any means. If I do that, then I'm going to hell. If I do that, I will be condemned by the Adventist Church, my family, possibly friends. And so to be so young and to know that my whole world that I know, I could lose it just like that because if I say who I truly am, everything I know will just dissolve. At least that's what I thought in my life, I mean, in my mind at the time. And what I realized is for me, I had to step away from the church and as lovingly as is that a word? As lovingly as possible, and also share that with my family and friends, is that what I know to be true in terms of me being myself is not a bad thing. And trust me, I struggled with even saying that, with even living that, and being comfortable for a very long time because when you are indoctrinated in a certain belief for so long and you think that that is true and it's gospel, trying to, deconstruct that it's not easy. It is not easy. But I knew for me, I had to make those changes. I had to do what I knew was right because I knew if God is this amazing entity that has created all, he didn't create a mistake in creating me. He didn't create a mistake in creating, you know, anyone, right? And so knowing that and knowing that God is bigger than the Adventist church, he's bigger than, Catholicism, he's bigger than Hinduism, he's bigger than any type of religion, and I can see past the religious ideology and know that he has created, or they, or, whatever pronoun you want to use for God, knowing that this amazing entity has created all. How can I stop at what I have been taught and say that this is true gospel, everything that I've been taught in terms of, how I approach who I am as a person and condemn myself and suppress myself. I was like, that's not God. That's not godly. There's nothing godly about not about you suppressing who you truly are and you being your authentic self. And so I had to do a lot of work, like I said, and really get to a point where I made peace with the fact that the Adventist church isn't the end all be all. And there's more to life than just being Adventist. Just like there's more to life than just being a gay person, right? And I talked about that in a previous conversation where it's like, I'm more than just being a lesbian. And the fact that the religion that I grew up in is only seeing me as just that too was really distressing because it's like I'm so much more than that. I sing in the choir, I participate in Sabbath school, I was a leader in AY, I grew up a pathfinder. I had so many amazing memories, growing up in that church, going to camp meeting, tent revivals. I mean, you name it. All these things that I think about growing up and really wanting to just truly look back and be like, wow, I was truly living as my authentic self through all those experiences. And it's like, I wasn't, which in many ways is heartbreaking to think about. And at the same time, knowing that I was doing my best with what I had, and I think everybody, as best as they could, and maybe there are some people that weren't, but I just wanna believe that everyone that was surrounding me was doing the best they can, even though some of the things that were done and said to me were very hurtful. I just know that for me, now looking at this is like, if we're pigeonholing ourselves in these little boxes, whether it be religion, our sexuality, our gender expression, professions, if we just constantly see ourselves as those one things, we can't evolve outside of whatever else is to come for us. And so for me, like I said, I've made peace with this, and I encourage those that are still on this journey of trying to figure out, does religion afford you the ability to be your authentic self? I mean, that's your own journey. That's something that you have to find out for yourself and figure out for yourself. But I know for me, religion just wasn't the path. Me believing in God and my spirituality is the path for me, and trusting that everything is always working out for me in ways that I don't know that I would have had that mindset if I would have remained in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and that's just for me. I just wanna keep emphasizing that that's for Alicia. But I will say this, my grandmother years ago, and I don't even know if that she was referring to this as a religious type of mentality, but I remember her saying to me, and this has stuck with me forever, is that don't let anything separate you from the love of God. And she looked me in the eye and she's like, I mean anything. And I don't know if she like thought that, she was like letting me know, like, I know about your situation. I don't know what it was. But I was so grateful that she did say that to me, and that I have allowed that to transcend beyond religion and know that God is going to be with me regardless if I'm in the Adventist church, if I'm in a Baptist church, if I'm in a Presbyterian church, or if I'm just worshiping in nature to the higher being that is God. So, yeah, it's definitely a thing that I have worked through, I continue to work through, and I just wanted to just talk about this a bit today on the podcast because I know a lot of us are still in a place where we are struggling with our religious beliefs, our spiritual beliefs, and if it aligns with who we are as a LGBTQIA plus individual. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share uh, the kinships information. I'm going to actually share a section that says The Bible and LGBTQ Adventist by Alicia Johnston. And, well, not just that. I'm jumping the gun here. I wanted to share the resources section. That's what I want to share. And the resources section, it provides so many different, obviously, resources. And they have different podcasts that you can listen to, which is awesome. They have different little videos that kind of like discuss things. And the films, like I said, the Seventh-day Adventist. Then there's another one called Here I Am, Enough Room at the Table, and For the Bible Tells Me So. Yeah, all just different films where it talks about being gay and, being in the church. So those are some great resources. And then there was a section in the resources area that I thought was really interesting. Where did it go? So I want to make sure I provide that too. And you can find it here on the site. Hold on, let's see. But it basically talks about what the Bible says about being um, a part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And basically, there's nothing truly out there in the Bible that's like condemning the LGBTQIA plus community. And people will throw out certain Bible verses. And if you know the origins of those Bible verses, you'll know that it's not strictly talking about being a part of this community. That's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. But I will share the resources here in this episode. Yeah, I just wanted to really just kind of like talk about just my story as it relates to religion and how it has affected me. And then also just to let folks know too, it's like there's no angst, I don't have any bad blood or me just being angry about anything. I mean, at one point I was, trust me, but it was a lot of work, that healing work that I've done to get past a lot of that and realizing that, a lot of people that were in my life that were really trying to quote unquote guide me, they thought that they were doing what was right. Um, it is what it is, right? I've been on this journey to heal and really get myself together and know that regardless of whatever was put before me as relates to trying to suppress who I was, it didn't work. It didn't work at all. Um, but yeah, I will share all this in the show notes. It's not an easy topic for me to discuss because, the church was a safe haven for me in many ways. And so I don't know if this is like Stockholmish or not. I don't think that's where I'm going with this whole idea, but I do feel like there were a lot of good things. Like I said, there was a lot of bad things. And like I said, it's not easy because I still have family that practice Adventism. And so, like I said, it's not easy, but it has to be said. And I'm glad I had this opportunity to do this. So, like I said, I will share all the information in the show notes. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Eating Me podcast. Like I said, it might not sound like it, but it was a pretty difficult one for me to kind of get through. But if you get a chance to watch that documentary, Seventh-day Adventist, I definitely encourage you to do that. It gives you a perspective of what some people that are a part of the LGBTQIA plus community deal with, that have grown up Adventists and want to maintain their stance in the Adventist church. So yeah, like I said, I'll share all that in the show notes. I love you guys. Thank you for continuously coming back and either watching the podcast on YouTube or listening to it on your actual podcast platform. So thank you so much again. Please like and share this podcast episode and any other episodes in the future. And yeah, thank you all so much again, like I said, for listening to this week's episode of the Enemy Podcast. I love you all, and I'll see you next week. All right, bye.